I'm not sure I
young
understand the
girl that
motion that's
spoke
being
as well,
made.
the daughter,
Carly.
Carly. So I just think it would be nice to at least say, they don't have to say what they said, just to note that
Just
they
acknowledge
spoke before us.
Fine.
Takes a lot for them to get up.
Let's have a motion then
Okay.
to acknowledge those people.
Thank you. And, I mean, I made a motion, just
Okay.
including this. So, and so then,
Moved.
the others, other than that, that was the most, that was the thing that I wanted to list. Okay. So, I made the motion.
Okay, so
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Thank you. I'm sorry, Ms. McHale, we had a speaker card for you on that item. Do you still wish to address the board, though we finished it?
I
Okay.
do.
I'm sorry.
My name is Ruth McHale. I teach second grade at Westlake School, and I'd just like you to know it's been a long day of work today, and we also had a function at Westlake honoring the volunteer parents. But I'm very dismayed at spending 20 minutes on this. I think should have been taken care of before the meeting. I don't wish to spend 20 extra minutes watching the bickering. I'd just like that noted.
Thank you.
Ruth,
Yes.
I just want you to know that I did take care of this, and I did call the office.
But we're not supposed to interact. That's an issue to take.
I know,
later.
but I did try to get it done in-house.
I know that's not something we address right now.
Okay.
I got
This
all
brings
the-
us to item 3 on the agenda, the City of Daly City Coma Subcommittee. This vote, because the motion and the second were both made by me when we did our reorganization, we felt that the vote should be confirmed by being brought before the group again to be voted on, to confirm Mr. Ali as a member of the City of Daly City Subcommittee. I would like to once again make the motion that Mr. Ali serve on that committee.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Thank you. Okay, item 6. CSEA Chapter 233 and Jefferson Elementary School District tentative agreement for 2014-15 school year.
We did reach agreement pending the AB 1200 approval, which I think is also on tonight's agenda. The tentative agreement is similar to the one with AFT, that there's a 5% salary increase on the salary schedule, so it's ongoing, a new ongoing tiered cap for health benefits, and a one-time additional increase in the district contribution to health benefits for next school year.
Okay, do we have any questions or discussion? If not, could we have a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve the tentative agreement for 2014-2015 school year between CSEA Chapter 233 and the Jefferson Elementary School District, pending AB 1200 approval by the San Mateo County Office of Education.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Great. Okay, this brings us to item 7. We have a presentation on the District General Obligation Measure I bonds. Mr. Tony Shea of Keygent Corporation, thank you for your patience, Mr. Shea. Oh, boy.
What's this, more?
Bigger sheaves of stuff to study.
More beautiful?
Oh, this is the same? Oh,
Oh, it's the same. This,
they're the same. You want a pretty one?
Here you go.
Pass the others out to our audience members. Okay.
maybe we,
Let's not disrupt this right now.
There you go.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for having me back tonight. I brought what I think is probably a medium-length presentation here. We're going to talk a little bit about the basics of general obligation bonds, so it's kind of taking a step back a little bit. You've already issued your first series of bonds, as you know, but we thought since it's been a year since that happened, we would just start with a quick primer and then get back into what's going on with Measure I and give you more of an update as to what's your tax base doing, what are interest rates, and what does it look like for the next series of bonds. Please feel free to stop me if you have any questions as I go along. So first is, what is a GO bond? Well, a GO bond stands for General Obligation Bond. It's basically the most common way that California school districts finance capital improvements. The main reason why it's the most common way is it's if your voters approve a bond at a vote, the repayment of the bond is borne by taxpayers. It's not paid back by the district's general fund. So as long as you can put together a bond package of a reasonable tax rate, a reasonable project list, and you get enough votes, then you can have your voters and your tax base pay back the bonds, which will fund the capital improvements within your community. So basically, when you put a bond on the ballot, first the board has to adopt a resolution to put that on a ballot. So we do have a set of bond measures that are coming up in June, the first week of June, and then we have another set coming up in November of this year. Those are other districts, obviously not Jefferson School District doing that. But what those districts are looking at, what those voters are looking at, is a dollar amount that's being authorized by the voters. So for us, $40 million, for example. What's the project list, and what's the estimated tax rate or the cost to the taxpayer if they say yes to this bond? On page 2, I thought I would just go really quickly through the two types of bond measures that districts can seek. Prop 46 is kind of the old school original bond that required a 2/3 yes vote. Prop 39 is what came in 2000, and that lowered the yes vote threshold to 55%. You can still go for a Prop 46 bond, but most districts don't, because you have to hit the 2/3 yes vote threshold, which is a lot more difficult. But if you look down this matrix here, you can see the comparison of Prop 39 versus Prop 46. Obviously, the biggest item here would be the yes votes, 55% versus 66.67. If you look at the use of the bond proceeds, you'll notice that Prop 46, you cannot buy furnishings or equipment. So even though there's a higher voter threshold, you can't furnish or equip the buildings that you're building. So that's another reason why a lot of districts go for the Prop 39, because you want to be able to fill your buildings with useful things. Prop 39, because there is a lower voter threshold, they did establish some accountability measures. So you have to have a citizens oversight committee, you have to have annual audits. And then in the last row there, you can see that Prop 39 does have maximum tax rates that you can ask for. So we're an elementary school district, so we're allowed to ask for up to $30 per hundred of assessed value, and that's what we did successfully. And on page 3, just want to talk about the two main types of bonds. I'm sorry, was there a question?
It's just about the AB, the assessment value.
Oh, sure. Assessed value is basically the tax base of the district, and the tax base is what pays back the bonds. So what will happen is each year the county will set a tax rate based upon how big your tax base is. So they'll say, well, your tax base is, for example, $1 billion. Based on that $1 billion tax base, we need a tax rate of $30 to pay back the bonds in this year.
Okay.
And I'll show you more on that in a later page.
All right, thank you.
Sure. So types of bonds. There's two main types. There's current interest bonds, and there's capital appreciation bonds. You've probably heard about CABs because of all the hoopla surrounding them, because of a district down south that used them in what was seen as an abusive way. But
Can you give us a primer on how it was used abusively? For example,
sure.
San Diego, Poway,
Okay.
and how much the original principal was, and how much they were expected to pay in total interest payments.
Sure. So what Poway Unified did, I think at 2010 or 2011, is they issued about $100 million in bonds and they used only capital appreciation bonds to pay these back. And all said and done, the total repayment was going to cost the community over about $1 billion. So it's, if you look at that from a ratio standpoint, it's a 10-to-1 ratio. So $1 billion versus $100 million being borrowed.
So $100 million in principal, but then you pay $1 billion in interest. So
Right.
it's almost like a payday loan, like these payday places that, the predatory lending.
Yeah, how it works is, what happens is these capital appreciation bonds, they don't pay interest regularly. So if you were to issue a current interest bond, for example, that's kind of the most common type of bond issued. It's the most economic way to issue a bond. And what happens is, let's say you're an investor and you buy a bond for 10 years. You say, I want to invest my money for 10 years. I'm going to buy a Jefferson School District bond. It's a current interest bond. So what will happen is every 6 months you'll get your interest payment. At the end of the 10-year period, you get your last interest payment plus your principal back. If you buy a capital appreciation bond, what happens is if you buy that same 10-year maturity, now what you have is you're not going to get any interest for the 10 years. And then come that 10-year mark, you get all your interest that is accrued over time plus your principal back. Well, that's more expensive. First, you have interest compounding on top of itself. And then the other thing is, because investors in these types of bonds don't get a regular coupon payment, they will demand a higher interest rate, and they will get that higher interest rate.
Kind of like a balloon payment?
Basically, it's a deferred interest payment. So if you're not going to pay someone for a long time, they're going to say, well, I want a better return because I'm not getting anything in the interim periods.
So it sounds like these interest-only loans that were going on in 2006, 2007, 2008 with homeowners, and basically hundreds of thousands of people foreclosed on their homes.
Yes, it is. I think if used properly, there's a time and a place for them.
And
but
also-
I think there's also a way to not use them properly, and I think Poway is a case
And
of that.
also, isn't it also safe to say that the people that sell these loans, they also get a higher commission rate for selling cabs versus regular vanilla type loans?
That's not necessarily true, actually. It depends on what the agreement is, however the bond underwriter is compensated. Some bond underwriters will sell current interest bonds or cabs for the same fee.
So sometimes, not necessarily true, but there's a vested interest for an underwriter to sell a cab because they get paid higher on the commission rate versus a regular interest loan that they get paid lower. So,
Interesting. I wouldn't say that's necessarily true.
Let's
There
stick
could
with
be
what's
some
remained
examples
of
of
our
that,
point, though.
but I would say for most districts, you want to maximize current interest bonds and you want to shy away from cabs.
There you go.
So on this page, you can kind of see just graphically how a current interest bond works. If you look at the bottom left-hand side of the page, you can see the yellow bars. That represents the interest being paid on a regular basis. And then at the end, you get the last interest payment plus your principal back. Principal is being represented by the blue. On the right-hand side, you can see the cab, and that's all interest, all principal paid back at the end. Now on page 4, just a sort of a overview of what the district has already issued in its past. So you had a bond measure from 2001, that's Measure H, that was authorized for $52 million. All those bonds have already been issued, and you've actually refinanced those bonds as well twice and saved over $4 million to your community by doing that. Measure I is now what we are in middle of. Passed in 2012, $67.5 million in authorization. We've already issued $17.5 million from last year, and so now we have about $50 million left to issue. And the district hasn't issued any cabs to date from Measure I or Measure H.
All right, that's good.
And this is basically apologize for the small print if you don't have a copy in front of you, but this is basically just showing what I talked about on the last page, but you have Measure H up top, and you can see that was issued over 3 series of bonds. The first one in 2002, March 28, 2002, the second one in February 2004, and the third one in September 2005. You can see also the amounts issued, 15, 20, and 17 million. That's how the 52 million in aggregate was issued. And then if you look to the right-hand side of the page, you can also see how much is remaining from that bond authorization. So what still remains to be paid off. So Series 2002 was refinanced, so there's nothing left in 2002. Series 04 and 05 were partially refinanced, so there's only about 2.3 million left on each of those financings. If you look at Measure I, that was the first series. 17.5 million was issued, and 17.5 million still remains to be paid. And at the bottom, you can see the 3 refinancings that the district has previously transacted on. Then before we get into some of the bond scenarios for Measure I just wanted to go over some of the variables that we look at when we're not only planning a bond measure, but also issuing the bonds over time. The first one is, of course, your project needs. That's not only how much you need, but when you need it. Generally, the longer we can stretch out getting the money to you, the less pressure we have on a bond program, the lower tax rate we need. But you have a specific cash flow that you want to achieve, and you have a $30 tax rate that voters have authorized you for. So we want to make sure that we're trying to meet your schedule as best as possible while not violating the $30 tax rate. But in not violating a tax rate, we do have to make certain assumptions on the assessed value growth. So how is your tax base projected to grow in the future? And also on interest rates. So we do look at your history when we look at assessed value, but you know, that it's not going to be a perfect match. We can make conservative projections on how your assessed value might grow, but I can tell you for sure we're not going to get it right. What we hope to do is to be coming in lower than where the actual growth is. So we, for example, want to assume 3.5% annual growth, and it comes in at 5%. So that's where we want to be. Tax rates, well, we already know what that is. You're at a $30 rate. That's what your voters saw on the ballot. Interest rates, we also want to be conservative on. We are in a low interest rate environment right now, and everyone's saying that rates are going to go up. It's just a matter of when and by how much. Now, surprisingly, rates have come back down in the past couple weeks. The 10-year Treasury is at 2.44% right now, which is, it's surprising. But we're still planning on rates going up. And then the last thing here is Assembly Bill 182, which is basically the legislation that was passed because of Poway Unified. And I'll share with you the parameters that school districts have to live within now when you issue bonds, but a lot of that has to do with cabs and how you can use them now. So on page 7, this is your assessed value history. So you can see we're showing here your tax base going back to 1989 to 2014. You can see right now you're over $8 billion on your tax base, and that represents a pretty strong growth, over 6.2% growth from last year. And then we did also look at, your county's assessor is pretty good. They have a real-time tracking of where your assessed value is, and they factor in real-time appeals. And right now, they're projecting that next year you will grow by 4.7%. So that'll change, and it continually changes as they get through more of the appeals. But that's where it was today. So on page 8, this is your district bonding capacity. And this is actually just a statutory cap that the state places on school districts. So what it says is, what it tells you is how much outstanding in bonds you can have at any given point in time. So for elementary district like us, what we do is, if you look at the middle of the page, we take the current assessed value, which is $8.06 billion. For a non-unified district, we multiply that by 1.25%. If you were unified, it would be 2.5%. So with that, we get $100 million in total current capacity, but we still have to subtract what you already have outstanding from prior bonds, which is the $61.6 million. So once we do that, we show you here that right now, at this point in time, the snapshot of today, you have a $39.2 million bonding capacity, statutory. Now, this ignores tax rate limits, so this has nothing to do with how much you could issue given your certain tax rate. It's just, if you had all the tax rate in the world, you could issue $39.2 million right now.
Now, is that based on only Measure I or Measure I and H?
It's all bonds combined.
All right.
Right. Yeah, so it ignores what bond authorizations you have, what tax rate limits you have. It's just, you could pass 10 bond measures in a row all at once, and they could total $200 million, but you can only issue $39.2 million right now.
Right.
But what happens is, as assessed value grows, and as you pay down your old bonds, this number goes up.
Changes.
Right.
How often do you monitor that number?
So we look at it, we'd certainly look at it every time you issue, but it basically changes twice a year. Once when you get your new assessed value, and then the second time is when you pay down some bonds. I think we actually already went over this page prematurely, so I won't go over it too much, but these are some of the items that led up to Assembly Bill 182 being passed. It all started with Poway Unified down south. So now on page 10, I'll just give you a brief overview of the parameters that we now have to live within as a school district issuing GO bonds. So the first one is this debt service repayment ratio of 4-to-1. So where Poway had that 10-to-1 ratio, now what we have to live with is a 4-to-1 ratio, which is fine for us. We're nowhere near that. But some districts might be having problems with that. Current interest bonds, there was actually no change. They just restated what was already law at that point, which is they can go out 40 years, and they're just restating you can still do that. Capital appreciation bonds, or CABs, they reduced that. So where you could previously do 40-year CABs, now it's reduced to 25.
All right.
It also reduced the maximum interest rate on CABs from 12% to 8%. And I would say, in the current rate environment, not a problem. We're not anywhere near 8%, but if rates go up dramatically, 8% could become a limit sooner than 12% would be. The fifth bullet point is that CABs have to be subject to redemption after 10 years. Basically what that means is you have to be able to refinance your bonds if rates go down, and the lockout period for that refinanceability is capped at 10 years. And then the last bullet point here is, if you plan on using CABs, or if you plan on issuing current interest bonds with a term longer than 30 years, this Assembly Bill wants you to, you have to follow a new procedure now. You'd have to have back-to-back board meetings. The first one would be to just publicly disclose that you plan on using either one of these two items, the reasons why you're doing it. You have to have a cost analysis as to how much more it's costing you. And then at the second meeting, which has to be back-to-back, you could come back and adopt your resolution. So it's more of disclosure if you want to go this route. Okay, and finally, into Measure I itself. So as I already said, we've already issued $17.5 million, and so we have $50 million left to issue. And on an illustrative basis right now, on page 12, this is how we have it phased out. So you can see you've already issued $17.5 million in June of 2013. That was all current interest bonds, so you can see 0% CABs. And that had a repayment ratio of 1.7 to 1, so well below the 4 to 1 maximum repayment ratio. For Series B, which would be our upcoming financing, we're looking at $16.7 million, still 0% CABs, and a repayment ratio of 1.85 to 1. So right now you probably can see in Series D, given our current assumptions on interest rate and assessed value growth, if those all come true, which I can pretty much tell you they won't, it's going to be something different than that. But based on these assumptions, we're looking at 19.88% CABs, repayment ratio of 2.45 to 1, still below the 4 to 1 ratio, but could have some CABs. So I just wanted to provide that to you, is to say, hey, there's a number of things that can happen. Your assessed value could grow higher, your interest rates could come in lower. Or you could say, hey, if we get to this point and this is where the numbers are, you could say, well, we don't want to do the cabs, so we'll delay the financing. So you have a number of options. It's just, I wanted to share this with you 4 years in advance. So it's not going to catch you by surprise in 2018.
Can I stop you?
Sure.
So based on what my colleague here has brought up tonight, why would we be doing that? What would be the purpose?
It's only if you, so let's say, for example, you said, you know what, Tony, we definitely don't want to do it. What's the drawback of not doing this? What if we just want to stick with 100% current interest bonds? Then I would say, okay, no problem. What we'll probably need to do then is we can't get you the full 16.6 million in 2018. We either get you less upfront, or we can delay the financing, allow the assessed value to grow a little bit more, and then we can issue all current interest bonds. So that's just one of your options. The other thing too is, as we issue Series B and as we issue Series D, there's 4 years that come between now and just this projected date for this last financing. So, for example, we're using a 3% AV growth for 2014-15 right now, but we already see your assessed value tracker provided by the county is saying 4.74%. You build up enough years like that, we could be in a position in 2018 where we can get you the full 16.6 with 100% current interest bonds. So I think this is good that you're saying this to me, because I wanted to tell you ahead of time. So then I know 4 years ahead of time, it's, hey, no, we're not going to do cabs. If that's what the board says, then yeah, we won't do cabs. I'll show you other options to get around it. But
I guess what I'm asking, what would be the advantage? Because earlier you said there's a good way to use them.
oh, the advantage is, so if you absolutely need the money in 2018, then we can get it to you without
money.
going over the $30 tax rate. Because what happens is, we're not issuing all of these as cabs. It's only about 20% of the 16.6 million. And the reason we're doing that is, if we were to issue all current interest bonds, then in the front part of the tax rate schedule, which is that bar graph that you see there, we would be popping over your $30 tax rate.
Got you.
And we're not allowed to do that because that's the Prop 39 maximum.
Right. So is there ever a point where you would have to just not use some of the money that you have been authorized to use?
So, for example, if we did find ourselves in a position where we were above the tax rate and you had bonds left to issue,
Yeah.
then you probably, and I'm going to look at Nick, your bond counsel, but I think if you're above that $30 rate, you can't issue bonds until you project to be below
To be- all right.
to be below that rate.
All right.
Yeah.
You have to project every year that the bonds are outstanding.
Right.
Right. So we want to be careful. It's a balancing act. We want to watch. We want to maximize the current interest bonds because those are the most economical. But if you have certain cash flows on the construction side that you have to meet, then we have to share with you the possible scenarios. Some of them could be cabs, and you can always say no to those.
Right.
But it is just something to know that it's a tool in the toolbox. You don't have to use it, though.
All right, thanks.
Sure.
And before we go to the next slide,
Sure.
I'm interested in it's a beautiful chart and bar graph. Can you explain to me the long purple one, year 2043, and what that represents?
Sure. So all the bars here represent the tax rate associated with each financing. So you can see Series A, which was already issued. It's represented by the blue bars. So you can see what we do when we have one bond program that we issue over multiple series of bonds, and we have one tax rate. We maximize the tax rate in the earlier years because there's no other bonds to issue, and then we drop the rate to make room for the future series to come in. So you can see for the Series A, we dropped the rate in 2015 because you're going to probably be issuing some bonds in the 2014-15 fiscal year. If we don't drop the rate soon enough, then you're facing caps.
But is it also safe to say that 2043 is basically the balloon payment, similar to what Poway is running into? $100 million
I would
in
say
principals
that is where
comes
the
into $1
cabs,
billion
I would say that's
in.
where the cabs are, but I would say that we're definitely not anywhere near Poway.
But you keep on saying that cab, 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 cab. It's obviously something that's dangerous, yet you've suggested it many times. That's basically what I'm just saying.
You know, get that, but I think I also understand the explanation that, and certainly he's not recommending using it in large amounts, but that if, and I hope that we don't come to that, and that when the time comes, we can say, if it needed to be cabs, that we don't have to have that money now.
Right, that's
But
all.
if it's a choice between having a very modest amount of cabs and, say, leaving a major construction project not quite finished, I think that you could see that we would be having a very interesting discussion up here, because neither of those is a great option, and it would require, so that's, so I get that. And this is giving us the realistic look. If we have to take that option, that's what we're going to get. And it would put us, maxed out on our $30 per assessed value for longer because of the higher rate.
Right. Yeah, but
Yeah.
that is where the cab is, so you're right in zeroing in on that year. But as I said, it's a choice. You could decide to delay the project, and maybe we can avoid it. Or there's other structuring tools we can use, like bond anticipation notes, which, that's a whole other set of risks associated with it, but we don't even need to talk about it today.
Yeah, Ms. Kessler?
Yes, I want to make it clear that I specifically asked Mr. Shea to speak about the cabs, so that, he did not say that he felt we needed to use them, but I specifically said I wanted it to be a study session so that information can be shared exactly what they are, when we would need to use something like that, or when we might choose to use something like that. So this is not coming from him, it's coming from the study session that I requested him to provide. Can I just ask one other thing, though? Because these are all based on 25-year bonds, correct?
Some of them are longer, actually, they're all less than 30.
Okay, so one of the options would also be to make it a longer period of time, is that correct?
Right.
Okay,
Up to 40.
Up to 40.
thank you.
Right, because then that reduces the amount that you have to pay back each year. Got it.
Well, I think it makes sense for us to get the information and for the public, because actually, some of us might not be around at that time, so the information will be out there.
And that is actually what I want to echo Mr. Ali on that. I'd like the viewing public, the taxpayers, the teachers, the students to know how dangerous these things are. It spun the U.S. out of control in 2007, 2006, 7, and 8 because of insolvency. There's always going to be the push that prices of your assessed value is going up, 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 up,
That's
up.
good.
But we saw what happened in 2009 and 2010. Now, the interesting thing about this is that the disconnect between the commission rates paid on these types of loans and who eventually has to pay back the loans. Now, we remember what happened in the crisis. I just want everybody to remember it. That's why I always bring it up, that these are very, very, very dangerous things.
All right, thanks.
Appreciate that. Carry on, please.
And actually, that second to last page, page 13, this is actually the estimated debt service schedule for Series B. So you can see the principal and the interest schedule. Again, these are all current interest bonds. And you can see there's no cabs, and the repayment ratio is 1.85 to 1. The reason why that looks kind of funny, you're probably asking, well, how come we're not paying any principal in 2017 through 2025? And that's the area where we're leaving room for the future bonds to come in. So actually, if you look back at the graph now on the prior page, you can see that coincides with the drop in the rate. So you see 2 years of principal, and then the yellow bars go down. And then if you turn to page 13, you see 2 years of principal, and then no principal.
I think I follow that.
The last page was just some bullet points, potential use of cabs. I think, not at all suggesting that you use them, but if you did, they would be AB
It's coming up.
2 compliant. I already
Nice
know.
commission. Nice commission.
Mr. Otidy, yeah, let's not be unreasonable and.
I'm not your underwriter, so I'm not getting a higher
Making a
commission.
commission.
And we have, okay. So these would just be some of the, if you used cabs, which Of course, we're not suggesting, what they're used for. And again, it's really just tax rate management. And if you did use them, they would, of course, have to be compliant with AB 182, which you'd have a limit to 25 years. They would be refinanceable, so they'd have that 10-year prepayment provision, and the repayment ratio would have to be below 4:1. Any questions?
Well, yeah, that one, on 14, the second one that says, if we do cabs,
Second one?
second bullet point, can be refinanced if interest rates decrease.
Right.
So what would make the interest rate decrease?
Just a general movement in the interest rate environment. So anytime you hear bad news or bad economic news, generally interest rates come down. Also, what happens is, let's say in 2014, we issue a 10-year bond, and it's 5% interest, for example. Well, as you move down the timeline, 5 years from now, you can refinance. That 10-year bond is now only a 5-year bond. So now you can match a 5-year bond rate with an old 10-year bond rate. So a lot of times that helps refinancings work as well. So there's a number of things that can happen.
So it really means refinance.
Exactly.
It didn't say refinance, I want to make sure.
Can
No, it
be
does.
refinanced.
Down here on this one?
Can be refinanced.
Yeah, well, yeah, okay. But I mean, that's the reason for the interest
Right.
rate going down. I mean, that's the reason you want to refinance?
Is if interest rates.
If interest
Only
rates
if
go
interest
down.
rate, okay.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
The same as you would refinance your home mortgage if the interest rates dropped by
Bad
several
news for
percent.
everybody
Or
that gets
car.
caught in that. I don't know.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Shea.
Appreciate
This
it.
is very illuminating.
Yes, very.
But we already read it.
One more thing I would like to add. During the Masters in Governance classes that me and Mr. Waters went to, I took the finance portion. We discussed cabs, and they too said, by any means necessary, stay away.
Stay away.
Well, right now, yeah, that certainly looks like the best option. Like I say, I hope that it never even comes up as an issue. Okay, Section 2, Curriculum and Instruction, Item 1, Acceptance of Donations. We have some non-trivial donations to accept with thanks here. Would you like
Yeah.
to?
I would like to thank the Community Education Fund, which is Silicon Valley Community Foundation and UC Berkeley. I want to thank my best friend, Dr. Dante Yuson, Miss Tammy Law, and Mrs. Dorothy Wynn for their donations to our schools, and to accept these donations as stated.
Second.
I actually just had a slight question, or not even a question, but just a suggestion about finding out a little bit more about how the achievement gap is being reduced in math for, math and our English learners. And I know we get reports on that, but
We have, actually, this relates to the one that we got a report on, I think,
From-
last fall. This is the MELD, the Math, English Learner, English Language Development, Math and English Language Development, there. I
our
might get it out.
nailed, yeah.
And that's what this grant was paying for.
paid-
I'm
paid
getting
for.
nods out there from the people
All
who
right.
know. All
So
right.
it's working, right?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
We have an amen from the audience. So that's good to hear. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of accepting with thanks?
Aye.
Any opposition? Great. This point, the English Language Development Update
There we go.
is being tabled because Mr. Moser was unable to attend after all.
Right.
Um,
So there it was, right there.
So, and I believe that that is also going to be the case with the LCAP progress report because of Ms. McCulick's illness. So I'm sorry for people who came.
Just had one though, right, at the last?
We did have one at the last meeting. I'm not sure what's changed, but we will get further updates. Actually, at the next meeting, we will have a presentation, I believe, of the plan,
Actual, all right.
because the following meeting after that, on the 28th, 23rd, the 20-something, is when we will need to be approving that.
All right.
Okay. This brings us to our business and
Could we bring up item number 4 so we can take care of this? So they can go home? It's only, other item after
Sure, before we
this.
get to, yeah, because let's see, the other thing is the update on the
Numbers,
budget.
I don't know.
Sure, we could
Do
jump
4 and
ahead
6.
to,
The appointment?
to our personnel and do that. So we will come back to business and jump
Do you want
to,
to go home early?
right.
Number 4?
I can't imagine why they'd want to go home. To Section 4, certificated personnel, number 4, administrative appointments for 2014-15.
I just wanted to make a motion for this, because I think we don't need a big discussion, but, and also to, I missed the last meeting, so I'm asking the question. Why are we using ratification when we should say appointment? And that, the way it's read, it looks like the title, administrative appointments for 2014, 2015. They're hired forever, aren't they?
I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Hopkins, are we not,
I mean, we don't always say that we hire people just 1 year. Is that all we're hiring them for?
no,
It's the effective date, I believe.
Well, that doesn't say effective date. It says for 2014-2000.
we do have-
So I just want to take off the 2015 and make the motion saying effective, the effective date.
yeah, okay, so in the body
Oh,
of the
in
text, it
the,
says
oh,
effective
in the
date.
title
Yeah,
of
yeah,
the
but the
text. Oh,
title-
Right, but the
and-
body clarified it.
Exactly,
Yeah.
but still, let's,
Sure.
yeah.
Um,
So,
To answer your other question, we did, in fact, make the appointments in closed session at our last meeting. We are ratifying them now in open session.
did you report it out?
We did report it out,
Okay.
and that was to allow us, in particular, to begin filling the now vacant position at
Okay.
Fernando.
And the only reason for saying this is because a lot of our hires are sometimes done after the fact, but we still say that we're hiring them, that's all. I just wanted to make sure.
Right, yeah. So they have been hired and
Okay.
reported out.
Okay, then I'll make a motion that we approve the ratification of the following appointments. Dina Conte as principal at Marjorie Tobias Elementary School, effective July 28, 2014, 213 workdays. Step 2 with a salary of 104,867 plus 1,100 for a master's degree. And Mr. James Adams of Director of Special Education, effective July 1st, 2014, 224 workdays. Step 5 with salary 128,940 plus for a master's degree 1,100 and 1,100 for a second degree.
Second.
All right.
What is a second degree?
It's an additional degree. It's a second, if it's either a second master's degree or a doctorate.
Oh, okay.
In this case, it's his doctorate.
Okay, it'd be nice to say doctorate. Sounds
Well,
better.
it says Dr. James Adams.
Okay, I'm going to say, I put it in there, say it.
Say that was doctor.
Doctorate degree.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay. Okay, we have the motion and the second. All those in favor?
Aye.
I want to congratulate.
Welcome.
And if either of you has anything to say, you don't have to put in a speaker card. You're welcome to say it.
Welcome.
Good evening, distinguished board, cabinet, and community. I just would like to thank you for the appointment of principal at Marjorie Tobias. I'm very excited to be working with the community, with the students, the staff, and to be a part of that wonderful school. I'm also honored to be able to remain in the Jefferson Elementary School District. So I look forward to a wonderful year. I look forward to working with all of you, and thank you once again.
Congratulations.
And I say we are lucky to be able to have you continue working in our district.
Actually, I also wanted to say thank you very much. I've been in Jefferson School District for about 15 years. This year, I've been the program director for mental health, and so I'm happy to move into the role of director of special education. And I know we have a lot of work to do and a lot of things to work on together. I really appreciate getting together a team to help us figure out what direction to move, how to improve programs for our community. I really enjoy working here. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
for all your service and your
Congratulations.
continued service.
And I very much wanted to be at that last meeting to be able to make that vote on it, so I'm glad we got to do it tonight. And especially, I'm happy that we're able to promote from within. I think it really says a lot for all of you guys that hang out with us and work hard, and that we are showing you we appreciate it. Thank you.
It's also a counter argument to what's been presented that people leave our district for other districts and don't want to come here. So I'm glad to see both of you be appreciative as well.
Right, yes. Okay, thank you very much. And then we'll go back to section 3, business and financial.
Did you want to just do this too, or is it?
That one's not relevant to
here?
any particular individual, so
They're not here? Okay.
that's because we haven't even hired them yet. Because that's one of the new positions we created.
No, I know. I thought it was a sub.
No.
All right.
Okay, excuse me. So in business and financial procedures, item 3. There we go. Resolution 140528, and this is, of course, relevant to the report we just heard. Resolution of the Board of Education of the Jefferson Elementary School District authorizing the issuance of our general obligation bonds, Series B.
I'll make a motion that we approve it. The resolution 140528.
As stated.
I won't repeat it, you already
No,
said it.
I didn't get all of it out even at that.
Without cabs.
For our, yeah.
Yes.
Well, we can't say that because it doesn't say that
Right.
here, does it?
It's
Second
your
motion.
motion anyway.
Yes, we do have a second. We have a motion and a second, and in fact, I will assure people, no, there are no cabs on this. This is a healthy bond, so to speak. So all those, let's see, yeah, all those in favor, no, this is a
Roll call.
resolution, we need the roll call vote.
Mr. Otidy?
Aye.
Mrs. Brizuela?
Aye.
Mr. Ali?
Aye.
Mr. Waters?
Aye.
Dr. Douglas?
Aye,
Yay.
and we can continue with our remodels. And that brings us to item 4, May revise. I'll hang on to one for me.
Good evening. I'm here, of course, to talk about the revise, to share information with you about the state and how it affects school districts and specifically how it affects Jefferson. So to start out with California's economy, it is still growing, but at a slow pace. At least it's positive. Our April unemployment for California was 7.8%. National average was 6.3%. We are still 24% behind the national average. We're also 33% behind where we were in January 2008. So we still have a ways to go here. But as you can see, that at the peak of the recession, we were at 12.4% unemployment. So we have improved greatly. We're on the road to recovery. It's a slow road. Hopefully it will be steady along the way. California needs to focus on creation of jobs, good jobs. 50% of the people working in California are not paying personal income tax. It's because the jobs aren't good jobs. So we need to have better jobs. The over 500 CEOs were surveyed